I should say a couple things about the baggage that I bring to this work, so you know where I'm coming from. I come as a practitioner, though not with quite as much experience as Patrick. I come as an academic. I come as a former school board member, trained in management schools, and I'm a union member, my faculty union. So I've got a number of different perspectives on this work. So what we're trying to do is to put some theory and some practical research around a study of what the impact is of these kinds of changes around partnership and around collaboration. What's the impact on teachers? What's the impact on the union? What's the impact on principals and other administrators? I'm joined in this with a former student, John McCarthy, who's been part of this work since he's been my doctoral student. He's now at Cornell teaching. He actually came out of Montgomery Township Public Schools, the table sitting here, and so I need to give him a lot of the credit for the work that you're about to see. So we're going to try to look at what is the link between union management partnerships, school-level collaboration, shared decision-making, goal alignment, the increased discretion on the part of faculty, and psychological safety. What's the impact of all of that on student performance, on teacher turnover, on union management relations, on the transfer of knowledge between schools in a district and the adoption of innovation, on the efficacy of teachers, on principals and union reps as resources to faculty, and on communication. So that's kind of the agenda in front of us. So first, I think we should define this. What are we talking about here in this study around collaborative partnerships and educational quality? It's public school improvement and reform based on district and school and team level union management collaboration that empowers educators to collaborate at the school level, sharing decision-making, aligning around goals, having increased discretion in their classrooms to have increased voice, and therefore promoting from educators innovation from within districts and from within schools rather than simply implementing innovation from the outside, from Washington, from state houses, from other places that have been informing the reform debate over the last 16 years, with a focus on teaching and learning. Why partnerships? It improves quality of decisions because people closest to the problem are involved. It improves the quantity of solutions because more people are devoted to improvement. It improves the quality of implementation because you get more support. And it improves quality by giving voice, either full voice, meaning we're not going to move ahead unless we have consensus, or partial, where input is valued and included, rather than what we call pseudo, where you're being asked to contribute, but the truth is the decision's already made, you just don't know it. So we want to avoid that at all costs. Let me give you some data from a study on the ABC Unified School District in Southern California that John and I studied over the last 10 years. 30 schools, 1,100 educators, 21,000 students. 46% qualify for free and reduced price lunch. 25% are English language learners. They've had a long-term partnership going back to the 90s. I'm going to give you data from the California Academic Performance Index that are standardized tests in math, English, social studies, and science, which was being used up until the current day. It's being changed now. But this is what was used over the last decade to measure progress. It also factors in graduation and dropout rates. The district also, in partnership with us, did a climate and partnership survey. And I've got network data, meaning I asked everybody, all 1,100 educators, who do you talk with on a regular basis and what do you talk about? So human capital is what you know. Social capital are your relationships at work. Both are critical, and so we wanted to measure both. So here's the punchline for this piece. Each one of those green dots is a school. The line shows the relationship between the quality of the partnership as measured by the educators in the school and the improvement in the California API from one year to the next. The results are statistically significant. This controls for poverty because we factored in for each of those schools the percentage of children who qualified for free or reduced price lunch. So the partnership, the quality of the partnership at each school explains 54% of the variation in improvement in test scores from one year to the next. So something different was happening in the schools in the upper right than what was happening in the schools in the lower left, right? The collaboration that took place had an enormous impact on the performance of children learning in those schools. If we could move a school from the lowest level of partnership of 1 to a highest of 4, they would gain about a 10% increase on their API scores from one year to the next. 76 points represents about 10% of the average in the school. A 1% decrease in poverty increases the test scores by 2.23 points. So if the whole district was at 100% free and reduced price lunch and you eliminated poverty, you'd get an average of 223-point increase per school. Because this district has an average poverty rate of 45.5%, eliminating poverty would increase APIs on average by 101 points. And that's the biggest thing you could do to improve learning in those schools. But it's been a pretty intractable problem. If you moved every school in this district to a high partnership school, you'd get 76 points, which is 3/4 of the way there. We should be doing both. But this simply points to those who say the only thing you can do is eliminate poverty. This says, no, these are independent. You can improve performance both by eliminating poverty and by increasing collaboration. They're independent of one another, and we can have strategies for both. What were faculty and administration talking to each other about? They were talking about 4 topics: student performance data, curriculum development, cross-subject integration, or grade-to-grade articulation, sharing and advising and learning about instructional practices, and mentoring. If we compare the lowest partnership schools in the district with the highest, you'll see that on average, the low partnership schools, the lower third, were talking weekly. 17% of the faculty in that school had conversations about one of those 4 topics on a weekly basis, either about performance, mentoring, instructional practice, or articulation. The high partnership schools had almost twice that, 30%. 30% of the faculty in those schools had weekly conversations about one or more of those topics. And the difference there, again, is statistically significant. Here's a middle school. This is the result of that study we did about who's talking to who. That's actually a diagram of every educator in the school. The bluish ones in the center are the faculty and administrators within that middle school. This was a low-performing school, and now it's one of the highest-performing schools in the state. The square is the principal, the triangle is the union rep, and all of the circles are faculty members. The size of the node are how many communication links, and on the outside are their contacts with educators in other schools in the district. And you can see that's a pretty dense network. When you measure density, the number of people talking to each other, it's a fraction, right? Of all the conversations that could happen on a weekly basis, how many take place? In this case, 69% is a pretty significant amount of conversations to have in those schools in that district. Let's take a look at outcomes for teachers. We tracked 150 departures from this district from the 2009-2010 school year to 2014 and 2015. Teachers in the highest poverty schools in the district left at a rate 3.5 times that in the low poverty schools. But for each 1-point increase in collaboration in the school, the effect of poverty on the rate of turnover went down by 20%. In other words, this is what the low collaboration schools look like. The high poverty schools have 3.5 times the turnover of the low poverty schools. But in the high collaboration schools, the effect of poverty all but disappears. In other words, you're not seeing the high level of turnover in the high poverty schools if they're highly collaborative, because faculty feel they've got support from one another to deal with the difficult problems that you see in high poverty schools. And so the collaboration has an impact not only directly on students, but also on faculty in terms of their ability to get their job done and their willingness to stay in the profession and in the school. What about outcomes for union management relations, the relationships between the building reps and the principals? Here we compare, once again, high partnership schools and the low partnership schools. The top circle, Building reps and principals in the high partnership schools reported that on a daily basis, 58% of the time, the union rep and the principal talked every day. 58% of those schools reported daily conversations between principals and building rep, with the other 42% saying at least we talked every week. In the low partnership schools, only 15% of the building rep and the principal reported daily conversations. And 31% reported that they only talked monthly at the formal faculty meeting. They didn't seek each other out in hallways and cafeterias in each other's offices. And when we asked, how does that conversation take place? Is it informal? Do you grab each other in the hall? Do you have coffee? Do you have lunch together? Or is it a formal faculty meeting? The high partnership schools reported 92% said it was both informal or formal. The low partnership schools said 25% of them said we only talk at the faculty meeting, which is a public arena. It's not a private person-to-person, one-on-one conversation. So the conclusion here is that in the highly collaborative schools, the relationship between the principal and the building rep is quite different. A highly collaborative schools, there are more frequent conversations and less formal conversations than in the low collaborative schools. And this is about, it's another network diagram, but it's looking at how innovation is shared across the district. And you can see that there are 2 point people that are responsible for communications across the district. On the left, you see the principal, and you can see that principal's connections with other principals in the district. And on the right, you see the union rep, and you see the union rep's connection with other union reps in the district. And what we found in terms of the reporting by faculty in the schools of their understanding of innovation in other schools in the district and their ability to implement it in their own school, that 2 things had to be in place. Collaboration had to be high, and the union rep had to be strongly connected. Teachers in schools with stronger partnerships are more likely to know about and implement innovation from other schools, and union reps who have more ties to other union reps facilitate the knowledge transfer. In other words, knowledge transfer across a district is strongest when the school is collaborative and union reps are connected. And that adds value. Here's a picture. The highly collaborative schools, when the union rep is more connected, you get more receipt and use of knowledge. When it's a low collaborative school, the connections by the union rep don't matter much. So it changes, collaboration changes what a union rep is able to do in a district. So here's that triangle. It can be a corporation, each of those lines representing a different department: marketing, organization, accounting, human resources, manufacturing, research, or it could be a school district with different schools, or it could be a high school with different departments: language arts, world languages, mathematics, social studies, phys ed. When you've got a problem in the traditional organization, you've got to move that problem up the chain of command to get a decision, which means a lot of problems don't get moved up because there's resistance, particularly on the part of the middle management, to reveal that there's a problem. It takes time. Not every problem is going to get up there. And by the time it comes back, you've lost time, and the problem definition may be lost in the translation. What you'd like is the ability, at the level in which the problem occurs, to get it addressed. You'd like something that is more horizontal rather than vertical, more democratic rather than hierarchical, right? And what you create when you create these union management partnerships is that middle school network. It's the ability to connect people within a school to others in the school who share an interest and a concern around the problem, or connect people across a district who share a concern. So in essence, what you're doing in creating these partnerships is you're creating a different form of organization that gets superimposed upon the traditional hierarchy that we've inherited. And that is much more efficient. That allows more problems to be surfaced, more problems be dealt with effectively in a timely way. So what are the findings of both the earlier research over the last 10 years and this new data set that we're coming in. Union management partnerships lead to more extensive collaboration between educators, which improves student performance, including in high-poverty schools. Strong partnerships reduce the impact of poverty on teacher turnover, a critical problem because I think most predictions are we're losing a third of the teaching force in the next 5 years with the retirements of the baby boomers. How are we going to replace them? How are we going to retain people that ought to stay in the profession but are frustrated by the profession, by the assault on the profession, by the blame on the profession? We need to keep as many people as possible and recruit more people in. And collaboration allows that to happen. Partnerships lead to more frequent and more informal communication between the union and the principal. Collaboration increases the impact of ties to other schools on the adoption of innovation and on learning from one school to the other. Collaboration, goal alignment between faculty and administration, sharing in decision-making, the discretion of a teacher in her classroom, the psychological safety in the building, all are associated strongly with perceptions of increased student achievement, perceptions of increased teacher efficacy, perceptions that the principal is seen as a greater resource and that the union rep is seen as a greater resource, and that there is increased communication around all of those different dimensions: student performance, instructional practice, mentoring, and articulation and curriculum. With partnerships as institutional networks, a fundamentally different organizational form than the hierarchy. That these partnerships are networks for problem solving, for information sharing, for diffusing innovation. When we look at what it takes to build a partnership that will last, in a study we did of partnerships that had been around 15, 20 years, critical was the strategic piece, that they picked off problems that had strategic priority around issues like curriculum and teacher evaluation and peer assistance and review, and mentoring and professional development, articulation by topic K-12, cross-disciplinary integration, building schedules, new teacher orientation, coaching, teaching academies, textbook selection, instructional practice, technology planning. That list was all done jointly. I mean, I look at that list and it looks like a list of what management gets hired to do. In these partnership schools, those topics were addressed collaboratively, jointly, either saying we're going to move ahead by consensus or there will be significant input before a decision gets made on every one of those topics. With a willingness to experiment, and if it doesn't go right, people aren't treated harshly. They're saying, okay, we've learned something, now how do we improve on it, right? That's the psychological safety. And I think that that's critical because that goes back to the whole question of what's the focus here and how do you, what's the driver and where do you get started? A culture of collaboration, aligning interests between labor management faculty, sharing leadership, management seen not as a class of employee, but as an activity everybody has to be engaged in, because management essentially is about setting priorities and managing scarce resources. That's a job that everybody has to be a part of. It's not a class of employee. Identifying priorities related to teaching and learning, guiding problem-solving activity at all levels, district level, school level, classroom level, engaging faculty and staff in improvement, being exposed to national best practices, which is about what this TURN network is doing here today and throughout the year, assessing and measuring success, figuring out a way to determine how we're doing, what's going well, what isn't going well, and how can we improve on it. These are the key pieces of that puzzle. What are the policy implications? We need institutional support. We need to create learning networks across districts that are interested in collaborative approaches that link experienced districts with inexperienced ones. That's what this TURN network is today. That's what the TURN networks are throughout the year. We are creating them also at a state level. There are at least 4 states that are involved in creating networks. In New Jersey, we've got a network going at the state level and across districts, California as well, Illinois and Massachusetts. We need state-level resources that help to build the capacity, offer training, skill development, facilitation. We need more conferences like this that demonstrate the effect of collaborative approaches to improvement that provide technical assistance, that highlight models and best practice. And we need more research, frankly, on what works and what doesn't work, and we need ways to share it. The next step for our research, we're about halfway there. We want to do 1,000 schools. I shared with you data from 140. By next fall, we'll have, I think, about 360 and maybe even more. A number of the districts that I show data from are in this room. If you're interested and you haven't participated, we're interested in providing data not so that we can write academic papers. We're interested in providing research that informs practice. Well, sometimes we call action research, which allows us to measure the impact of what you're doing on teaching and on learning and feed it back to you in a way that's useful for you to navigate this difficult work and to benchmark within a district and across districts as a way to accelerate the improvement process in a way that is not punitive and comparative only to the degree to which we can learn from each other and improve our practice. We want to look more at patterns of grade and subject level collaboration. The fact that we found improvement at a school level from collaboration, I think, is kind of extraordinary because it means that the culture of a school affects teaching and learning. We want to really nail it down around teams at the grade level and at the subject level and look to the relationship between those teams at a smaller level and performance at a grade and a subject level. We also want to do more work around turnover. What attracts people to schools, districts, and the profession, and more about why people would leave the profession as a way to try to correct those issues and retain good teachers. We want to look more at inter-school networks and collaboration, including the role of the union in facilitating adoption of innovation and the adoption of collaboration. And we think we need better outcome measures, because what I was showing you so far were perceptions and test scores. And people look at both of those, but that's not the only measure of student learning and student performance. And so we need help figuring out what are better or more or multiple outcome measures that we can inform the research with. And the initiatives that at the state level, we talk about leverage in terms of how do we drive change. For 16 years now, the initiatives have come out of Washington. With the reauthorization of ESSA, that shifted to the state level, which means state level initiatives are going to be even more important. There are 4 states that we're aware of that have made an effort to drive in this direction. Those states are represented in this room today: the Massachusetts Education Partnership, the CEC here in Illinois, the Labor Management Initiative in California. Shelley Mazur is here leading that. And in New Jersey, we've got a collaborative school leadership network that includes the heads of the New Jersey Education Association, New Jersey AFT, New Jersey School Boards, New Jersey Association of School Administrators, which are our superintendents, the New Jersey Principals and Supervisors Association, along with Rutgers. We've got a 6-district pilot. In fact, Metuchen and Montgomery are 2 of the districts in there. We've created a learning network among those 6 districts, and we're going to expand that to an additional 6 districts in this year so that districts can learn from each other as well as from themselves. And we need to link these 4 states together, and I think CEC may be the hub for that, to figure out what we can do nationally to try to drive improvement around collaboration and partnership.